here. In fact, let me get out from under the bridge. I don't want to be in the direct sun because my phone overheats. And I was checking out the graffiti updates. The city wipes it clean here like once a month. And there's practically nothing there. I don't have any paint on me. You know, I have been working on a tag, but I'm not a tagger. And I have this blue marker, this giant Sharpie that I was going to use for the purpose. But the unicursal penguin is my proposed tag. You may be familiar with it. I'll do a demo. One line, and it's got the infinity sign on the head. It's kind of the signature. So the title of the live stream is Performative Outrage. I think that was a part of it. Performative outrage and the fake resistance. Yeah, I'm going to be tagging this everywhere. But it's going to be a blue marker. And I'll probably add the blue wrench to it. I've just been doing a redesign on the wrench itself. But the performative outrage thing, I got an email this morning from someone who's mad at all these corporations that make needles. And they think that I'm bad or wrong because I'm not mad at the needle manufacturers. You know, just like there's a bunch of people mad at the gun manufacturers. We got to stop the gun manufacturers. Armalite's the bad guy. Even though, and they paid $73 million to the Sandy Hookers. It's like, okay, like they're not in on it. But I've been thinking about the performative outrage and bitter clingers, and I think I know why. So the outrage is virtue signaling. And look, this is just facts. Feelings, facts. A lot of people are guided by their feelings, and they don't like the facts being pointed out. So there's this fission, this fracture rather. You know, you got the neocon and the woke right. And the woke right contains as a subset the red pill ideology. So Trutherville is actually firmly ensconced within the woke right. That's just a fact. And all of the anti-positions are on that side of the political horseshoe. That's another fact. And I'm not labeling people woke right just because they're needle phobes. I'm saying that your needle phobic position is part of the structure of the far right because of the fact that it puts you in a position diametrically opposed to the woke left. And the phrase woke refers to a worldview informed by a new perspective, recognizing this power structure that everyone else can't see. So this is just something I've been pointing out, which is why I take the anti positions, because these are all controlled positions. So if you're going to come to me and say that you have the moral low ground because you're not against Pfizer, I'm going to say, no, you're controlled opposition. You're actually my enemy. You're the enemy of any free thinker if you're fighting for the mind war against the targets of it. So the people who get super triggered about, you know, the needle thing, yeah, they're triggered. Just like the left gets triggered over their issues. Being triggered is the point. Being triggered doesn't mean that you're righteous. Being triggered doesn't mean that I'm woker than thou. Therefore, I'm more informed and you're defeatist, or whatever I've been called. No, if you're triggered, it means that you're a victim. The red pill is working. The red pill is meant to excite you, incite you, anger you, and tap into your emotions. Because when you're emotional, you're not being very intellectual. If you're emotional and triggered, you're not going to see through the psyop. So I see people who are repeating the psyop narratives. They haven't figured things out. It's 5 years after 2020. And it's like, at this point, you're just a propaganda mule. Soul 101 says, I'm thoroughly convinced Epstein is still alive. Yeah, look, how many times are they going to serve that nothing burger? 2015, we're going to release the files. 2016, 2017. Yeah, vote for Trump. He's going to release the files. Epstein is a myth. The story behind Epstein is the point. It's not about facts. It's about the story. So the point of the story is the Epstein story provides evidence for something that nobody has evidence for. The Epstein story, if true, would prove that Israel controls the world because they blackmailed our politicians. It's a cool story, but it's a story. And they don't need evidence because people already believe this, but this gave them something tangible, or so they thought. So the Epstein thing was always really just a propaganda line, and it worked. A recruitment tool. You know what Epstein did? Epstein recruited a lot of conspiracy theorists into the woke right. So the so-called J pill, the JQ, stuff's all fake. Deprogrammed Truth says, could Epstein's face be from thesepeopledon'texist.com? I don't think we need to reach that far. You know, he could just essentially like a spy. You know, if you look at basic spycraft, you have regular people given new backstories, new identities, and they serve a function. So without even having to invent, oh, he never existed, or he's just AI, we could just say, no, he's just some crisis actor, basically, an actor, a state actor. And the thing is, it's such a sensitive topic that if you're like, well, I don't believe in Epstein, then it's like, oh, well, then you don't care about the children. Save the children, Pizzagate. I saw Milo Yiannopoulos, former editor of Breitbart, woke right mouthpiece. And today he was questioning, could the Epstein, no, he said, could Pizzagate be fake? I'm like, what the hell? You know, there are some highly intelligent people who are so insulated that they can't arrive at the right conclusions, and sometimes it almost hits them. It's like, yes, the Epstein story is a mainstream version of Pizzagate, which is a reiteration of blood libel, which sets the stage for this basic dialectic, which is the heart of woke right ideology, Jewish world domination. And that's what they believe. Soul 101 says, what's the purpose of this theatrical mess? The theater of Psywar is for the few to control the many. They have billions of people in a box. So we have a one world religion. I'll call it mainstream mediation. And this isn't about watching the news, because it's all passive. You don't have to watch the news to be part of the program. But the mainstream mediation is the worldview that we all share, the consensus agreed upon, that rests upon history. And what is our history but an amalgamation of lots of fake news? So decades of fake news and psyops, agenda-driven narratives, create the worldview that we share. In this worldview, we have things like nukes, we got the pandemics, we got space rocks, we have World War III, we got Civil War. So we have all these various things that don't really exist, that these hypotheticals that are basically plot devices and props. And the MSM box is there to keep everybody in a containable worldview. It's a religion. And now the people who take the red pills or the woke pills are simply in a subset of the main box. And I call their programming MSM plus. And that's because they don't believe the mainstream view tells the whole story, so they add additional. And it's all built upon this assumption that the fake history is real. So they treat 9/11 as a real, like, think about it. Every major pundit out there operates in a universe where 9/11 happened as advertised, where 2020 happened as advertised. So they are taking the subjective worldview presented through media and treating it as objectively real, and that's where they live. But we know it's not objective. We can prove it by citing history and the use of fake news. Nobody escapes this box. This is a closed informational system. They're all programmed. Now, if you reject these hyperstitions, I don't believe in nukes. I don't think the governments are against each other. I don't think that there's going to be a World War III. I think this is all just a bluff to control people. If you start to look through these things, you're like, well, wait, if this, then what? If Trump's ear wound was staged, it implies a bipartisan complicity in the PSYOP itself. So when you start deconstructing these, you're like, wait, I can't trust the MSM Plus because it's built on this. I certainly can't trust the mainstream, so where does that leave you? And this is where we are. The subtractive view, skepticism. MSM minus, meaning we subtract from the MSM that which can't be verified as true. So our worldview isn't the world we experience augmented by all this mediation, but it's the world that we live in, the real one, plus whatever we can verify. And this often leaves us in a position of agnostic, informed disbelievers, where we believe a lot less than these people, but the things we disbelieve, we know more about than they do. Ollie Goering says we're orphans. Well, deprogramming is the only active consumption of media, because everything that we're talking about in this MSM closed system, we are suspending judgment, analyzing it before we decide whether or not to believe it, whether or not it's believable, true, knowable. So that requires the active parsing of information or critical thinking. In the box, or in this closed system, there's nothing active about it. MSM Plus believes their pundits, like Stu Peters, or Del Bigtree, or Alex Jones. So they don't believe the mainstream stuff, they believe they're alternative pundits. But by saying believing, I mean they're getting served information to believe. It's all passive. They're passive consumers of information. So the point of it is, truthers are passive consumers of information just as the blue pillars are. They just have a different source. So there's a qualitative difference between how we process information. So how do you process information? Are you a mainstream believer passively consuming what they're serving you? Or are you deluding yourself into thinking that by being a truther, you're getting better intel? But it's still lacking the critical thinking. Truthers still believe people die at the PSYOPs. Truthers still adopt every anti-position. Every anti-position is on the right side of the political horseshoe. You got pro, anti. Oh, I'm pro climate change mitigation. I'm anti geoengineering. And it goes down the line on every single issue I can list. And it goes down to, and it's split, it's designed. This is all designed to contain us. Like the left is female coded, the right is male coded. You have the Freudian aspects that are pretty obvious. I've talked about this before, the significance of guns versus needles. Gun is an active, needle passive, in the sense that to get the needle, you got to be penetrated by the vax, and that's the power of the state inserting itself into you. And the gun represents self-defense. It's taken to be, at least on the far right, we need the guns to protect us from the government so they don't inject us. So the gun is active, masculine. Needle would be passive, feminine. And this divide is there on purpose, not to be reconciled, but to contain us. The reason for the Epstein PSYOP isn't to save the world or wake anybody up. It's to maintain this division. They need us perfectly split down the middle. And it's genius. The entire system is genius. And it works. It's incontestable. It's enslaving billions of minds, and we can see it. So my interest here isn't in waking people up with alternative propaganda. My interest here is in taking all those who figured out the closed informational system is a rigged game and that it's psy-war. Every truther can see psyops, but they miss the psy-war. They miss the big picture. And that's one of our main, I think, developments here that's worth exploring is the whole idea of history. So if we're looking at fake events influencing history, our history being bent in the direction of fakery, of manipulation, of propaganda, well then we can state unequivocally here that the world is very much subjectivist. And those who figure this out, who step out of it, who become skeptics and active consumers of information, who reach what I would consider to be deprogrammed, exist outside of this closed system. And I want to get all those people into this, what you could consider a third branch of media. Mainstream, alternative, and what we are. And what we are isn't anti-media, because we're not here to oppose it. I consider it to be, I use the phrase parallel media. Thank you very much, Frank. Appreciate that. Plain Dakota says, I wish we had the Metascriptures textbooks they learn from in the mystery schools. Well, I think we do. Yeah, we can find their rationales. But as far as how this thing is implemented, one of the best books on the subject is kind of recent. It's called Mind War by Michael Aquinos. So Michael Aquinos wrote this book in the 90s, circulated the Pentagon. It's a PDF. And Mind War is now again, this is the guy who founded the Temple of Set. So you have the Church of Satan, and he was one of the heads of the Church of Satan, and he formed his own sect called the Temple of Set. Anyway, he was well known for being in the military, performing military satanic weddings and funerals. He recently died, supposedly suicide, which is sad. I hope it's not the case. But regardless, his book Mind War was about how the wars of the future would be replacing literal destruction with simulation, and that they would achieve the same ends. So the purpose of Mind War is containing our minds, controlling our minds, directing us, but it's worldview warfare. And now, is this a benevolent dictatorship? Is this necessary? According to a lot of the great minds in history who've written on the subjects of military and governance, yeah, you could find rationales in there built in. That the masses are fickle, lawless, full of lawlessness, and that if they're not contained, they will destroy themselves. And so the introduction of the terror of the gods is actually a useful way to pacify and control people. And that could be true. I mean, look what happened in 2020, how everybody kneeled. Everybody bowed down to the black cube. Everybody locked down in your decentralized FEMA camps. And that's when it became very clear to me that the Mind War has actually encompassed all of the truthers. So that's when I gave up on Trutherville. The red pillars and the truther people are only given alternative propaganda lines. They're not actually shown the exit. They never find their way out. But what I'm proposing here with Exit Trutherville is the name of the course, is that there are enough of us who could be considered deprogrammed. And look, that's not a term I use like I'm awake. A lot of people say, I'm awake. Who woke you up? Alex Jones woke me up. No, this isn't a woke thing. It's a situational awareness thing. It has to do with an understanding of how propagandized we are and the need for skepticism. But if you're taking any anti or pro position, if you're political, if you're following a politician, if you're following one of these big pundits, if you're still drinking the Kool-Aid at Alex Jonestown, hitting the Q-pipe, if you're addicted to nothing burgers and hopium, you're not deprogrammed. If you're triggerable, and that's what got me thinking this morning, because the person I was referring to was very triggered that I don't give a damn about anti-vax. And it's like the fact that you're triggered means that they got you. Because the whole point of the Psy-War isn't to shoot you with real ammunition. It's to use fear and simulations to affect you psychologically, to affect your entire life. Commenter says, what about being anti-lockdown? It depends. Really depends, because the anti-lockdown movement was hijacked by anti-vax. So at first it was legit. We were the first ones on that. We were doing the empty hospitals. Remember emptyhospitals.com? When we started that whole thing, I got the press passes out. I'm like, look, you're now an essential member of the workforce, your media. You don't have to lock down. So the press passes were given out so that we wouldn't be locked downable. But the whole movement of anti-lockdown on the principle that the thing was a hoax was overshadowed by the anti-lockdown anti-vaxxers. So the useless became, the movement itself, the anti-vax, the anti-lockdown, it became a movement that was totally controlled by a bunch of slick plans. And it was no longer grassroots, organic, or indicative of awareness about media fakery. So no, at that point I realized this is pointless. I'm not going to go march lockstep with a bunch of controlled opposition fools. So if you were anti-lockdown and you joined the move, you were co-opted. So I didn't lock down. I just took a trip to Corona Field. You know, Corona Field in Roswell, where the UFO crashed. I drove out there when I got my stimmy check. But you can take the non-position. See, the anti-positions are all controlled. The non-position is non-participant, conscientious objector. I'm a non-vaxxer. Because the instant you say I'm anti, now you're lumped in with all the triggered people, the plants, the propaganda agents, and now you're firmly attached to the political horseshoe. Now you're basically a MAGA, you're a Trump voter, which is fine. I'm not criticizing people's political opinions. I'm just saying, if you're taking part in politics, you're supporting a system built on fakery and you're acquiescing to it, because every politician has. I mean, you don't think that Trump is in on it after Butler? And he's not in on it like it's a cover-up, like Epstein, for example. The people who believe the Epstein story will say it's a cover-up. It's because they can't let it go. Now, what keeps people locked into being triggered? Why are people still so anti whatever it is after all this time? It's called sunk cost. Same thing with gambling addictions or bad relationships. People just keep on they keep on investing their emotions, their social capital, their time. I mean, all we have is our time and attention. And if you spent 10 years of your time and attention on Jeffrey Epstein and vaccines, you're never going to get that back. So you have to either reconcile with yourself. I wasted 10 years of my life freaking out because of propaganda, or you can double down on it and say, I'm fighting the deep state. I'm a veteran of this war. I've been fighting it for 10 years. Ollie Goering says, so the mass hypnosis is necessary or else humanity ceases to exist. Well, that's what I'm trying to determine. Like, it seems to me that they've taken us out of or we're transitioning, it seems, into a simulation. Not in the simulation theory sense, but rather increasingly, we are being guided by simulation. By simulation, I mean by the construct, the Truman Show construct, which we internalized. Diana says, I worked in a 660-bed hospital in Chicago. They closed down 600 and said they were full. Oh, yeah, we were watching the perception management on that whole thing. And when it was over, this is why I'm anti-vax. Because after we figured out the whole thing was a big psychological operation, they said, oh, no, the reason why people aren't dying is that they're being sterilized. Or they would come up with different ways to continue to cling to the idea that there was a real threat. And when I see someone getting mad at Pfizer, I'm like, oh, IPS, you're not mad at Pfizer. You must be getting checks on the side. Yeah, I am. And Delta Airlines gives me frequent flyer miles for debunking chemtrails. And Big Oil pays me to not deny climate change. That's very culty to think that anybody that doesn't agree with you automatically works for the other side. But that's where people are. But if you see the anti-vaxxers whining about Pfizer and all these companies, you have to recognize you're looking at the same thing that we saw with the Sandy Hook people getting mad at Armalite, the gun manufacturers. They go after the manufacturers. This is a template. And if you're falling for one of these psyops that fits within a neat template and it's totally predictable and you're in a box, then you are by definition mind controlled. And if you're triggered, you're MK Ultra. MK Mind Control Ultra. They can show you something on the screen, a headline. You can see a headline, and now you're in fight or flight. And you got to go fight the system and wake people up. Go cry wolf. Plain Dakota says, a mass hypnosis is what it takes, in my opinion, to run the giant pyramid scam that is the giant corporation that is the world. Well, doesn't religion just mean to restrain? Like, religion is just basically about mind regulation. And media is the most advanced form of religion. And religion, in my view, is really just about worldview. Like, this is our backstory, this is the future, and this is how you're supposed to live. Like, these are just basically control systems. And that's why I talked about Superman yesterday. I think the reason for all these sun gods brought to us in the movies is it's part of the church. So the people watching Superman are at church. You're watching this 33-year-old savior, and you're internalizing various lessons. People were complaining that it's promoting wokeism and stuff. And if you look at it, it probably does. But the point is, it's trying to teach people to be better according to the system's concept of what is better. Cygirl says, if you're afraid of them, then Tim thinks you've been psyoped, so get over it. Yeah, 100%. You've been psyoped. You can't point to me a pile of corpses that Bill Gates killed. Nobody's blotting out the sun. Chemtrails do not exist. The Epstein Island hoax was a reiteration of Pizzagate, which was fake, which is a retelling of blood libel, which, again, it's all mind war. If you really believe that whiteness controls the world and you're oppressed, you're mind controlled. If you believe in Jewish world domination and you're oppressed and that's why you're an incel, you're mind controlled. So yeah, I stand firm on that. So you're suggesting, Cygirl says, you're afraid of them, then Tim thinks you've been psyoped, get over it. Yes. So by contrast, Cygirl says, if you're afraid of them, then you're on the right side of things. You're what you're fighting. You're an activist. The resistance is fake. The resistance is controlled opposition. In fact, you're serving the mind war. You're firing their ammunition. The only place here I think you can consider to be reasonable and, quote, awake as far as situational awareness is MSM minus the skeptical view. And I'm a skeptic. And they don't want you to be a skeptic. They want you to believe the headlines. They don't care if you believe alternative or mainstream. They want you to believe the headlines. Why think for yourself? You're just a sheep, right? So you believe the headlines. You just happen to believe the alternative media headlines. If it's anti-vax, I believe it. Oh, look, a celebrity died. He's 87 years old. Oh, the vax killed him. I believe that. Well, I'm a non-believer. See, believing is the problem here. We shouldn't be believing. We should be thinking, analyzing, and coming to know what is true, or arriving at an informed disbelief about that which we can't verify. So I'm not a believer. That's why I'm not triggered. So yeah, I will absolutely affirm what the commenter said. If you're afraid of them, you've been psyoped. You've been hit by the psy war. You're a mind war casualty. 100% get over it. You can thank me later. And you really should be thanking me. Thank you for saving me from another 10 years of obsessing over Jeffrey Epstein. Thank you for saving me from being terrified of cirrus clouds. So absolutely. And by the way, I appreciate the channel support. I'm in the process of looking for a larger place than my office so I can focus on other things, video and art. I want to have a setup like Candace Owens or Laura Loomer. They've got these really great setups. Lighting, the mic, the sound. So I'm working on something. Paradoxy says, I'm not afraid of them, but I'm concerned about the people who fall for the propaganda. The people in my life who are psyoped will try their hardest to drag me down with them. Yeah, that's my point here too. The 2020 showed me this. I'm not worried about Bill Gates and Klaus Schwab because they're not the elite that are oppressing me or who can affect me. It's the neighbor. It's the family members who fall for the propaganda that you directly interface with. Plain Dakota says, taxes are oppression. No. All taxation is theft. Property is theft. It really depends on how you look at it. I would say that's too general of a statement. I mean, there's a lot of debate on it. Like, I'm all for sales tax, consumption tax. I don't believe in taxing the rich. I don't believe in redistribution of wealth. I don't think we should hate the rich. And even that term means less and less as time goes on. But what we're studying here, when we're analyzing the box, the MSM, MSM plus, like, you can look at this and you can say, this is what my family believes. And I can't talk to them from out here about any of these issues because they won't get it. That's why you can't wake people up. You cannot wake people up if they're not critical thinkers already, because it's not about belief systems, it's about operating systems. How do they process information? If they're passive consumers of information, you can't wake them up with reason and facts. I'm not even trying. And I'm not pointing fingers, but we got commenters in here who are in the MSM plus box. They're woke right. And I point that out because that's just a fact. If you've adopted this stance, these positions, if you're opposed to the positions on the woke left, which are the political extremes in the horseshoe, this political horseshoe model, they call it a theory, but they've implemented it. If that's where you are, then you cannot be reasoned off of it. We can point out the flaws in your argumentation, but if you're not willing to confront those with reason and logic, if you're still gripped by fear, if you're still scared, you won't get there. That's why I think it's important to recognize that fear is the point of the thing. And I'm not scared. If you're woke, you're scared. I'm awake, like crying wolf. The boy who cried wolf was scared. Well, at least he's coming from a position of, you should all be scared because of this threat. And it's like, you're crying wolf over here, and I don't believe there is a wolf. I know there isn't a wolf. The wolf criers are all hoaxers. So again, the believers in the system do not have the intellectual nor moral high ground. We do. So again, I am not apologizing for not being afraid. You should be apologizing for spreading fear, for sharing the Alex Jonestown Kool-Aid, for passing the Q pipe, for dispensing red pill, creating addicts. Yeah, we live in the village, Paradoxy Moronics, 100%. By the way, and I'll go over this later today, my battery's about to die and the phone's probably going to overheat, but there's another video of Butler, Pennsylvania, where you can see, after Trump was shot, you can see the photographers being ushered over into position to take photos, and that flag that was behind Trump, they lowered the flag to be in the background when Trump was shot. They lowered the flag into place for the photographs after the bullets went down. So the shooting happens, and then they put the flag behind him. The whole thing was staged. You can see it on my Twitter account. We'll talk about it later. So thanks for your time. We'll definitely cover the new Butler footage. You got to see it. And that changes everything. The fact that Butler was staged is a game changer. That should be a paradigm shift. Thanks for the support, everyone.